We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara from Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 11a. In the Gemara in the previous summon, we had a machlokas tanoim whether the lishkas parhedron required a mezuzah or it was just a gezerah that it requires a mezuzah. The Rabbanan says it requires a mezuzah, and Rabbi Yehuda said it's just a gezerah that it requires a mezuzah. So the Gemara now asks, who does the following brisa go according to? Kol hashiorim shayu sham. It says all of the gates in the eastern part of the Azara, lo haya lehem mezuzah, they did not have a mezuzah, chutz mishar Nikanor, except for Shar Nikanor, shalifnim mimenu lishkas parhedron, because within Shar Nikanor was the lishkas parhedron. Since the lishkas parhedron had a mezuzah, Shar Nikanor had a mezuzah as well. So the Gemara says, Lema Rabbanon hi v'lo Rabbi Yehuda. Let us say this follows the Rabbanon and not Rabbi Yehuda. De'i Rabbi Yehuda, because if it follows Rabbi Yehuda, he gufa gezerah. The lishkas parhedron itself is just a gezerah that it requires a mezuzah. V'anon neikum v'nigzar gezerah legezerah. So now we're going to make a gezerah on the gezerah and say even the gate that goes to Shar Nik, even the gate that goes to the lishkas parhedron, meaning Shar Niknor, that also needs a mezuzah. So the Gemara says, Afilu Tamer Rabbi Yehuda. You could even say this brisa follows Rabbi Yehuda. Kula chada gezerah. It's all really one gezerah. One big gezerah was that the lishkas parhedron and Shar Niknor require a mezuzah. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanon, we learned in a brisa, Bisharecha, the Pasuk says, Bisharecha, Echad Shari Bativ, V'echad Shari Chatzeros, V'echad Shari Medinos, V'echad Shari Ayoros. Doesn't matter if it's a gate of houses, a gate of a courtyard, a gate of a city, a gate of a town. Yesh ben Chovas Mitzvah L'makom. There's a chiyuv of mezuzah for those places, Mishum Shenamar, like it says, Uchsavtem al mezuzos Peisecho V'sharecha. It says your houses and your gates, all of these areas are chayiv in mezuzah. So Amar le Abaye le Rav Safra. So Abaye said to Rav Safra, Hani avule de Mechuzah. These gates of Mechuzah. Mechuzah was a city that was majority Jewish. My time lo avdulu Rabbanan mezuzah. Why didn't the Rabbanan make a mezuzah? It should be chayiv, just like all gates are chayiv in mezuzah. So Amar le. So he said to him, Hanu chizuk laakar de kuve hu diavidi. Those gates were really made as a chizuk, as a strengthening for the structures that were built above the gates. So he said back, Amar Le, so he said to him, Vakar de kuve gufe, tibay mezuzah. Those structures themselves should require a mezuzah. To isbe ba dira l'shomer beis ha'asurin, because that's where the person who watched the prisoners, that's where he used to live. So it was a beis dira, so that should require a mezuzah anyway. Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, beis hakneses sheyesh bo beis dira l'chazan hakneses. If you have a shul and it has living quarters for the chazan hakneses, for the shamish of the shul, chayeves b'mezuzah. That area is chayev in a mezuzah. So Elo Amar Abaye, so the Gemara says, rather Abaye says, Mishum Sakana. The reason we don't put mezuzahs on those gates is because it would pose a danger. The Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, mezuzahs yochid nivdekes pamayim b'shavua. It says that a mezuzah of an individual is checked 2 times during the cycle of the Shemitah year, 2 times every 7 years. V'shal rabim pamayim b'yovel. And if it's a public mezuzah, so then it's checked 2 times every 50 years, every yovel. V'yamar Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda said, Ma'isa ba'arta v'necha, there was a story with one inspector, Shayam bodek mezuzos, b'shuk ha'elyon shal Tzipore. He was checking the mezuzahs in the upper marketplace of Tzipore. Umatzu kaster echod, and a certain official found him, v'natal mimenu elef zuz, and he took from him 1,000 zuz. So you see there's a danger involved in these mezuzahs. And Rashi over here says, first of all, Avule de Mechuzah, Share Ir Sheshma Mechuzah. It means the gates of the city that's called Mechuzah. Vahayu Ruban Yisrael, it was majority Jewish. Liakar de Kuvi Binyan Bonay Alem. Again, there was a structure built above these gates. V'nikar Kuvi was called Kuvi. V'ashorim Tachta V'asuin Kekipa. The gates underneath, they were made in an arch-like fashion. Uvinyan Habonay Al Gabe Kipin Chazak Yoser. When you have a structure built over an arch, that's a stronger thing. So the gates really weren't made so much as gates, they were made to hold up that structure. So v'yakar de kuve gufa mishamosa binyan atzmo tiboy ashar mezuzah. So that's why the Gemara asked, that structure itself, the gate should therefore require a mezuzah. Shederech osa ashar nichnasin lo, because they would enter to the kuvi through the shar, and again, there was someone that lived there. And so the Gemara said, Mishum Sakon, it's a danger. Shalo Yomar HaMelech Keshafim Asisim B'Sharei Iri. We're afraid that the king is going to say they're doing witchcraft at the gates of my cities. Nivdekes Shemenir Kavo Nignava. Again, you have to inspect the mezuzah. Maybe something happened. It rotted. Maybe it was stolen. V'Shal Ravim. That means Sharei Chatzeros Medinos Vayaros. What it means the public. It means the gates of the courtyards of the cities, of the towns. Pamayim b'yovel, twice a yovel, called over shushal rab, mein latriach olav harbe. The idea Rashi says is, if it belongs to the public, you shouldn't do too much of a bother. Shem titrach ye kol echad omer yasu chaver. If it's too much of a burden, everyone's going to say, let someone else do it. It's a public issue. It's not my issue. Bi'artevin Shem Ha'ish. So that might be the name of the person, might have been Artevin. V'amri lo al Shem Ha'umna. Some people say that was what you were called when you were an inspector of mezuzas. And Kastor Shem Pekidos, who could go in Sardiot Vushoter. Again, this is an official, this is an officer of the king. So that is the sakana that this poses. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'yomar Rebbe Elazar, but didn't Rebbe Elazar say, Shluchei mitzvah inizoken, when you're on the way to do a mitzvah, a person doesn't get damaged. So why are we concerned putting up mezuzahs? Isn't it a mitzvah? Shouldn't we be protected from any danger? So the Gemara answers, Heicha dikviyah hazei kashani, in a situation where the danger is permanent, where the danger is immediate and real, then it's different. We are concerned even in a mitzvah situation. Techsiv, like the pasuk says, Vayomer Shmuel, Shmuel says, Eich eleich v'shama shol v'hargeni, how can I go to anoint David? Shaul is going to hear and kill me. Even though this was a mitzvah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, still you see Shmuel was worried. Vayomer Hashem, and then Hashem said, Eglas bakar tikach biyodcha, you should take an animal with you. V'yamarta lizboach l'Hashem basi, you should say, I'm just coming to bring a carbon. So again, you see in a situation of kviyah zeka, it is a concern even in a situation of a mitzvah. And the Gemara continues, Tani Rav Kahana Kamei to Rav Yehuda. Rav Kahana taught in front of Rav Yehuda, Beis HaTevin, Beis HaBakar, Beis HaEtzim, Beis HaOtzaros, areas you have that house straw or cattle or wood or other kinds of storehouses. Peturim min HaMezuzah, those are potter from Mezuzah, Mipnei Sha'anoshim Neosos Bohen, because the women benefit from them. We'll see what that means. But for that reason, these are potter in Mezuzah. The Gemara says, Umay neosos, what does it mean, neosos? Rochatzos, it means that they bathe in these areas, therefore it's not appropriate to have a mezuzah. So the Gemara says, Amar le Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda said to him, Taima de rochatzos, Rav Yehuda said to Rav Kahana, the whole reason why is because the women are bathing there. Hastam chayav, and the implication is that in a stam situation, they're not bathing there, these areas would be chayiv. But didn't we learn in the Brisa the opposite? Refes bakar peturim in a mezuzah. An area where you keep the cattle is patur from mezuzah. So the Gemara says instead, elamai neosos, rather, what does it mean neosos? Miskashtos. What it actually means is they adorn themselves in these areas. And the way you really understand the Brisa is as follows. Here's what the Brisa is saying. Even though the women adorn themselves there, that might have been a reason you think it's chayiv in mezuzah, still you're potter. In other words, the point is, really these areas are potter from mezuzah. So Amar le Rav Kahana, so then Rav Kahana said to him, V'shahanoshim miskashtos behen peturin. But according to what you're saying, then it comes out that in areas where the women adorn themselves, you're potter, but that's not true. Vatani, we learned in a brisa, Refes bakar peturim in mezuzah. It says again, the Refes bakar, the area for the cattle, is potter from mezuzah. V'shahanoshim miskashtos ba chayeves b'mezuzah. But it says if women adorn themselves in that area, then it is chayiv in mezuzah. So on the contrary, your answer is incorrect because the brisa here says it's chayiv. Elamayis loch l'meimer. So what are you going to answer? You're going to say miskashtos tanoihi. You're going to have to answer that the issue of miskashtos, the issue of where women are adorning themselves, is in fact the machlokas tanoim. We have brises in both directions. So ledidinami. So he says, according to me also, I can answer the same thing. Stam tanoihi. In a stam situation of these types of areas, there's a machlokas tanoim. In other words, the entire question on Rav Kahana was that there's a brisa which says Refes bakar is petura, and you, Rav Kahana, are saying it's chayiv. But Rav Kahana is pointing out to Rav Yehuda, according to you, by a situation of where women are miskashtos, it's a machlokas tanoim. So for me, a refes bakar in general is a machlokas tanoim. And where do we see the machlokas tanoim? Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, beisecha, beischa hamiyuchad lach. When it says beischa, it means the house that's designated for you. Prat lebeis hatevin, lebeis habakar, lebeis ha'etzim, lebeis ha'otzaros. That excludes all these different kinds of houses for straw, for cattle, for wood, other storehouses. Shepeturim min hamezuzah. Those aren't used for you. Those are used to store other things. Those are pater from mezuzah. V'yesh mechayivin, and there are those who say chayiv. So you see in this very brisa, there's a machlokas tanoim about this issue. So it's no problem. It simply is a machlokas tanoim. And as Rashi over here explains, V'chol chad min amoroi, each one of these amoroi, mitaretz l'taimeh, will give an answer to defend his position. Rav Kahana mitaretz, Rav Kahana will explain, Divistama pligi, that the brises argue by a stam refes bakar, there's a machlokas whether you need mezuzah, aval miskashtos, but in a situation where the women are adorning themselves there, dekuli al mechayav, and everyone would agree chayiv. For Rav Yehuda mitaretz, and Rav Yehuda will go according to his position. Divimiskashtos pligi, on the contrary, they're arguing in a situation where the women adorn themselves, aval stama, but in a stam situation of a refes bakar, dekuli alma potter. Everyone would agree that it is potter. And the Bryce over here continues, Be'emes amru, in truth they said, Beis hakise, if you have a bathroom, Uveis habursaki, an area where you're tanning the hides, uveis hamerchatz, a bathhouse, uveis hatvila, a place where they immerse, v'shahanoshim neosos behen, and again an area where the women derive benefit, peturim in hamezuzah. All these areas are patur from the mezuzah, and now the Gemara goes on to explain, similar to what Rashi just said, Rav Kahana metaretz l'taimeh, Rav Yehuda metaretz l'taimeh. Rav Kahana can explain this brayso according to his position, and Rav Yehuda can explain this brayso according to his position as follows. Rav Kahana metaretz l'taimeh. Rav Kahana will explain the brayso in the following fashion. Beischa hamiyuchad loch. When it says beischa in the pasuk, it means it has to be for you. Prat lebeis hatevin, ulebeis habakar, ulebeis ha'etzim, ulebeis ha'otzaros, shepeturim min hamezuzah bistam. To exclude all of these areas for animals, for straw, for wood, storehouses, those are all patur in stam situations. V'yesh shemechayvim bistam. And some people say no. In a stam situation, these places are chayiv. Again, according to Rav Kahana, the machlokas is in a stam situation. What do we say? By a beis habakar, etc. Be'emes amru, and in truth they said, beis hakisei uveis habursiku uveis hamerchatz uveis hatvila v'shahanoshim neosos behen, areas where the women derive benefit, umay neosos rochtzos. According to Rav Kahana, what does it mean that the women get benefit? It means they bathe in these areas. In those situations, patur. In other words, in areas where they're rochtzos, there it's patur. But stam, in a stam situation, that's a machlokas tanaim. Again, paturin min ha-mezuzah. It's patur from mezuzah if the noshim are rochtzos in those areas. Gemara asks, according to Rav Kahana, if so, if you're going to interpret in this fashion, hainu merchatz, then you've just repeated merchatz, because it says beis ha-merchatz, and then it says where the women are rochetz. So the Gemara says, Ashmin and merchatz to Ravin, Ashmin and merchatz to Yachid. The Bryce is teaching us a public bathhouse and a private bathhouse. The Salkadai to Chamina, because I might have thought, merchatz to Ravim, the Nafish Zuhame. It's one thing by a public bathhouse where it smells very bad. It's an area where it's not appropriate to have a mezuzah. Aval merchatz to Yachid, the Lo Nafish Zuhame, but in a situation of a private bathhouse where that's not the case, I might think it's chayiv in mezuzah. Kamash malon. Again, that's what the Bryce is teaching us. If they're rochtzos, in any case, it's going to be pater in mezuzah. For Rav Yehuda, metaretz l'taimeh, in it, Rav Yehuda will explain this entire brisa according to his position. Hachi katani, here's how you learn it according to Rav Yehuda. Beischa hamiyuchad loch. Again, it has to be your house for you. Prat lebeis hatevin, uveis habakar, uveis ha'etzim, uveis ha'otzaros. That excludes again the area of straw, of cattle, of wood, storehouse. Shepetura min hamezuzah. Those are all pater from mezuzah. Afilu miskashtos, even in a situation where the women are adorning themselves there. V'yesh mechayvin b'miskashtos. And some people say, when the women are adorning themselves, it is chayiv. Avol stam, but according to Rav Yehuda, in a stam situation, divrei hakol pater. Everybody agrees that those areas are going to be pater. And be'emes amru, in truth they said, beis hakisei, ubeis habursiki, ubeis hamerchatz, ubeis hatvila. If you have a bathroom, if you have a tannery, you have a bathhouse, you have a beis hatvila, an area where people go to immerse themselves, afal pisha nashim miskashtos behen. In those areas, even though the women are adorning themselves there, peturim min ha-mezuzah, those areas are pater from mezuzah, mishum the nafish zuhame, because again, those areas are not appropriate, they're not clean, not a place where a person should put a mezuzah. So the Gemara now asks on Rav Yehuda's position. Ul Rav Yehuda stoma divrei hakol pater. Does Rav Yehuda say in a stam situation all these areas are actually pater? V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa. Bisharecha, the pasuk says you put the mezuzah by your gates. Echad shari batim, v'echad shari chatzeros, v'echad shari medinos, v'echad shari ayoros. Like we said before, it doesn't matter if it's the gate of houses, doesn't matter if it's a gate of courtyards, doesn't matter if it's a gate of cities or towns. V'refes, v'lulin, umatvein, v'otros yayin, v'otros shemen. It doesn't matter if it's an area, again, for cattle or for animals. It doesn't matter if it's for straw, for wine, for oil. Chayovin b'mezuzah. This brisa says these areas are all chayev and mezuzah. Yachol shani mar ba'afna. I might think even to include, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yomi Gemara Amud Beis.